What's up, guys? It's KB. Make sure you subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. Click the bell icon down below so you don't miss a single video from us. And thanks for tuning in to another video from Underground Sports Philadelphia. Now let's get into it.
Philadelphia, baby, you're gonna love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
Welcome back to Top Bins, the show bringing you all the action for the next month at least or so from the World Cup from, regrettably, Qatar. I am your host, Matt, not joined by my usual co-host, Dom. I'm instead joined by Kyle. Kyle, how are you?
I am, as you say on the show that will follow this one up, living the dream.
Yeah, we're all living the dream. The U.S. dream still alive after their game against Wales, drawing 1-1. So they play England on Black Friday. That was always the fixture, I think, to look forward to the most, even when the draw came out. So I am looking forward to that. U.S. still has a shot, which is what matters the most. Coming out of that situation, coming out of the Wales game, a little frustrated that they end up drawing it, but it is what it is. We've had tons of action at the World Cup so far already. A lot of really fantastic games, a lot of goals scored so far, and some early narratives and storylines coming out of it. Dom's not with us tonight, so we're going to just talk a little bit about like the broader picture of the World Cup right now. Some teams we feel good about, some teams we feel bad about, maybe a little bit of panic and things like that. But yeah, we're just going to get abroad because we haven't even had every team play just yet. Still waiting on two groups tomorrow before we cycle back to the top of the order on Friday. Kyle, we got some questions that is going to lead us into some responses.
Yes. So, Matt, after, this first quote-unquote week, two teams you're feeling better about.
So we did like a small preview about the World Cup. We didn't go team by team, because I just think everyone does that, and I don't know how helpful it actually is because after like a week, half the teams are out of the tournament anyway. So you spend a lot of time just researching and giving information that ultimately I don't think is actually all that helpful. I think people are really more interested in who's going to win, who could be a surprise upset, and who could maybe go out earlier than we expect. One team we didn't get to talk about too much on the show because we didn't really pick them for any of like our categories that we had is Spain. I had a good feeling about Spain coming into the tournament. My biggest concern was goal scoring. Even though they had a really productive Euros, they scored a lot of goals there and made it to the semifinal, took Italy to extra time and penalties. I was worried about like not having an established true star, which they still don't. They really made me look stupid today because they beat Costa Rica 7-0, tied one of the largest like goal differences in a game in World Cup history, and it was really spread out amongst a group of like 3-4 players. And I think this team, Luis Enrique is probably one of the best managers at the World Cup, if not the best. He's had obviously like a really accomplished club career. They just have tons of talent, and the way the Spain team plays really just dominate possession. I think they could be a real nightmare to play against once we get to the knockouts if they get rolling and get some confidence. Gavi becomes the youngest goal scorer at a World Cup since Pele in 1958. So he's got rarefied air to be hanging out with. He had a fantastic finish today. But yeah, Spain, I just think I think they've looked really, really good in that. It's one game. We've only just seen them play Costa Rica so far, but any possible doubts I had about them, at least from a goal scoring aspect, I think have really been washed away, even from that one performance. In France, I think I told everyone to maybe not bet on France. It felt like Karim Benzema gets injured, at the beginning stages of this World Cup, in training, so he's out with a thigh injury. They already were missing N'Golo Kante, Paul Pogba from this tournament. Christopher Nkunku gets injured. Like, they've just kind of had this not great start. There's been, I think, some like off-field turmoil too coming into the tournament, and France as a national team have been prone to some blow-ups, some explosions in the past, and felt like maybe we were hurtling that way. And then they play Australia. Australia goes 1-0 up, and you think like, wow, like this is just going to go the way we kind of expected it to, is it? But France fight back. They end up winning the game 4-1. Olivier Giroud with a brace. He becomes tied for France's all-time score with Thierry Henry at 51. which is, I think, a little bit surprising when you consider Olivier Giroud's like profile. Not typically a player that we think of that way, but yeah, I was not sharp on France, and I think Australia is probably like one of the bottom, tier teams at this World Cup. I wouldn't say that they're like particularly amazing at anything, and I think they'll probably go out of this group perhaps winless. But I do think that the fact that France were able to show a lot of that offensive effort, Kylian Mbappe looked great, and that is going to be obviously the big point for them in this World Cup. If he's performing well, I think France, is going to perform well too. I would still be slightly concerned though. I wasn't like fully, because they did get dominated for the first 20 minutes against Australia. I think the midfield of France is still like, it's young, and that back line is young too. Luca Hernandez gets hurt, and I actually think, ironically, maybe to France's overall benefit, I thought the team looked much better when Theo Hernandez comes in, his younger brother. And there's a saying in American football, and that sometimes people throw around, which is like, this team is one injury away from being a good team. Sometimes you have to have like that, I don't know, like scratched in starter get injured. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're not performing at the level that they should, or maybe they don't fit the system exactly how they should, and there's maybe a player that kind of expands your horizons a little more. I personally feel that way about Theo Hernandez, and he showed it, had an assist in that game. And him and Kylian Mbappe on the left wing, I think constantly overlapping is going to cause nightmares for everyone in this tournament. And when you consider that, outside of England, the fullback positions everywhere you look in the international scene are not at the highest order, especially the right back. That could be a huge benefit to them. I can't see many teams coping with that very well. So yeah, the midfield, I think I still have some concerns about, but as far as, crashing out of the group, anything spectacular, I think we can very much say that's out of bed. When you win your first game too, 84% of the time, you go through and advance from your group. So it does not seem like we're going to get the France blow up that maybe some part of us kind of wanted, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of the teams that came to draws too, and then you look at, the I think one of the biggest upsets in recent World Cup history with Saudi Arabia upsetting Argentina, who were a lot of people's favorites. I still can't believe that happened. There was a video on Twitter that I saw somebody saying they met, it was like somebody from the U.S. met somebody from Saudi Arabia, and the guy from Saudi Arabia asked, what do you think about our game tomorrow? And the guy from the U.S. had no idea that they were playing Argentina. He was like, I think Saudi Arabia wins. And he was like, if I would have known they were playing Argentina, I would have laughed in his face. But turns out I was right. That game is wild to me that happened.
Yeah, it's wild for a lot of people. It's the World Cup does provide like the environment for upsets like this. It doesn't happen often, but every World Cup you do kind of get like one of these upsets, that you don't quite expect. And this, as far as like World Cup history is up there, is going to be talked about for years to come in terms of, just again, we'll remember Saudi Arabia beating Argentina.
Is that a 16 beating a 1 in March Madness,
yes,
essentially?
This would be definitely like comparable to a 16 beating a 1.
UMBC.
Yes, they're it does happen like more frequently because, like you have 90 minutes, it's one game, there's just like this sport is defined by just like flash moments, and you see it like explored through this game where Argentina have a few goals chalked off for offsides in the first half, really narrow margins. You're talking like half an inch in some cases where, if the attacker just starts his run like a millisecond later, it's a goal, and, Argentina's 2-0 up at halftime, and maybe they cruise to the win, right? But Saudi Arabia, like you look to it, even the expected goal numbers, not particularly great. 2.26 for Argentina, 0.15 for Saudi Arabia. So low probability all the way around, but it happens, and that's I think the big takeaway is like you can't be surprised when results like this come up because you're bound to at some point have some upsets within this tournament. We'll get to them later in the show about like how worried we should be about Argentina, but I would say just generally the way they played in that game, I'm not too concerned about them going forward. And we have seen a team lose their first game and go on to win the World Cup. Spain in 2010 lost to Switzerland 1-0 on their opening match, ended up winning the entire thing. So it's still like within their reach. This group is still very open. I wouldn't be like throwing anything out the window just yet, but Not a great start.
At all.
Not how you want to start.
And then the other thing, obviously, we talked about Team USA tying, but Gareth Bale just haunts this podcast to no avail.
Absolutely hate this guy. I'm sick of it.
It's 3 times now. Like there you go. They come in threes.
Yeah.
Gareth Bale, get the fuck out of our lives.
I'm so fucking sick of this dude and this top knot. He's ruined my life on so many different occasions now. Really, just it's a frustrating goal to give up to. Zimmerman doesn't need to make the challenge that he does, and I think what's frustrating too is him and Tim Ream played really well in that game, and that's I think now the takeaway though is going to be like Zimmerman and how like terrible he like. It's just it sucks that like one, and it is a bad decision, it is a bad challenge, but I hate that one moment just cancels out the other like 98 minutes that him and Tim Ream played very well in this game, and I think frustrated Wales in a lot of ways. So yeah, it sucks. You know, I think really the U.S. could have been a lot more aggressive, especially in that first half, especially in the first like 10 minutes of the second half. Felt like Wales were still there for another goal. I'm not totally sure why Gio Reyna doesn't see the field. Greg Berhalter says it's because he's still like has some muscle tightness. Gio Reyna says he's completely 100% fit, ready to play. Players never going to admit that they're maybe not at their most healthy, so who knows? Like, it's just tough. You know, I just think it's a frustrating result. It's one of those draws that feels like a loss, and that happens in this sport where, you know, sometimes a draw feels like a win. It really feels like you really earned that, and then sometimes, like in this case, where it feels like you really had the opportunity. I think, especially in that first half, you had Wales on the ropes, and were not able to come out with a win. I think the bright side though is that you have Iran on the last day, and they could very well be just completely out of it, and that's it. Now that can go one of two ways. Sometimes you see teams just completely pack it in. Sometimes it becomes a pride thing. They play a little more loose without the expectation, and we'll see. But you know, you have this England challenge now on Friday. Harry Kane dealing with an ankle injury, so you know maybe not at his best, but England have plenty of depth, so. They can pull off a shocker, though. I mean, it's totally within reason that the U.S. could beat England, but I think the more reasonable thing is they could get a draw out of that game. I don't think it's completely inconceivable. It's more likely that England wins, but you know, the U.S. still have a shot at getting out of this group. They still have you know, a good probability, and I think we're all kind of rooting for a Wales-Iran draw. I think that would likely be the best situation for the U.S. now. That's what we're rooting for at 5 a.m. on Friday.
And I think even with the draw against Wales, like with this Team USA squad being, you know, relatively one of the younger teams in the World Cup, like that experience alone, I think is just a confidence boost that like, sure, you were up for the first 45 minutes, but then you go to a tie against a team that has, you know, seasoned talent on it, like Gareth Bale, to be able to, you know, pull to a draw in your first World Cup game in 8 years. I think even though it's not the result you exactly wanted, it's a confidence boost going forward for the rest of the group phase.
Yeah, I think you made a really good point too. That this is one of the youngest teams. Each like everyone has kind of a different metric for like how young the U.S. actually are. It's like between 24 and 25. I don't know how it's like varied this much, but yeah, you know they are, if not the youngest team, one of the youngest teams at this World Cup. And you know, you look at a lot of the talent on the field. You know, like. And it is these guys that it's their first moments. DeAndre Yedlin is the only player that saw the field that had played in a World Cup before, you know. So it has been 8 years since the U.S. have been here, which is, you know, quite a gap. And I think, you know, if you're thinking like as forward thinking, right? Not that you're abandoning this World Cup already, but, you know, if you're looking towards 2026 and where this team could be, now that you have this experience, you have these players, and, you know, they're growing and developing at a really, you know, like respectable rate. They're playing in top leagues now. Like, you know, this national team is just in such a different place than it was in 2014, 2010, where they had good players, but, you know, it did not feel like there was a steady stream of them. You know, it felt like we were really stuck with like 2 or 3 really good guys, and then we're sort of like coloring in the lines for the rest. Not that those players were bad, but, you know, I think generally we have better quality all around, whereas it's, you know, it used to just be, you know, 2 or 3 guys sort of carrying the load for everyone. I think the U.S. are still in a good position, and I think you see some of that youth in that game too. You know, I think you saw a little bit of nerves from them, and I think too you saw like just the big qualm with the U.S. and their talent is injury records and health, and I think you saw in that second half a lot of cramping, a lot of guys hobbling off. Weston McKennie was dealing with an injury coming into the World Cup. He clearly did not look at his best. After about like 30, 35 minutes, he definitely looked like he was a little bit off, and you could definitely see, I think that's around where the U.S. performance does start to drop off a little bit too. I was really happy to see that we got the Musa, Tyler Adams, and Weston McKennie midfield trio. Like that is, I think, the best midfield we can line up with. We see Brendan Aronson come on too, and I like seeing him later in the games because we know that he has that energy and that stamina that can really give teams problems. I'll say that I think what makes me happy too is this team was really good when they were in control of the game. Like the US's MO has kind of been like maybe more of a counterattacking team, and they showed definitely bits and pieces of that in the second half. But I did like that they were able to control the tempo so well in the first half. I think that bodes well for their future. If you're looking forward to an Iran game, that could be like a big flashpoint too, like the fact that the U.S. is able to maybe break down what has been a low block from Iran so far in this tournament, and that they're going to be able to be comfortable in possession and perhaps actually like win that game rather than have to depend too much on like catching teams on the break.
100%. And Matt, before we get into the flip side of, two teams we're feeling better about, we'll get into two teams we feel worse about. But that segment of this episode and every episode of the Top Bins podcast is brought to you by PHI Apparel Company, our fantastic merch partners. They provide unique designs and high-quality clothing for the great fans of football, soccer, whatever it may be, and, of course, in our backyard, the great fans of Philly. With their original designs for all, there's no doubt you'll stand out in the crowd. Officially, there's Top Bins merch. Top Bins logos on a t-shirt right now. You can go get that at phiapparel.co, and you guys can use our code UNDERGROUND for 10% off any apparel when you shop online at phiapparel.co. That's code UNDERGROUND for 10% off at phiapparel.co. And it won't be up in time for Black Friday, but it'll be up shortly after. And I was told today from Tyler, our merch partner, person we work with, they're running a sale all through Christmas. So it's going to go from Black Friday all the way through Christmas. And Matt, I'm going to tease the Top Bins listeners with part of the merch capsule. It's going to be available. It's going to be up for 3 seconds on the screen. I want you all to think of the clothing company that has the red rectangle across it, but make it Top Bins. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. That's going to be on a shirt. Going to be on a hoodie. So if you saw it, you saw it. If you didn't, you didn't. But shout out to our merch partners at PHI Apparel Company.
Yeah, shout out to them, keeping the threads nice for all of us during the winter season to come.
So Matt, two teams now after this first round of games we've had that we're feeling worse about. We obviously mentioned Argentina a little bit. Not necessarily that we're feeling worse about them, but, not a great start. But who are two teams we're feeling worse about since this World Cup has gotten underway?
Yeah, so the first is Poland. Not a team that I loved coming into the tournament. Did not expect a lot from them. They've really underperformed at pretty much every major tournament in my lifetime. They now, though, have Robert Lewandowski, who's one of the top strikers playing now and one of the best ever. Just an incredibly talented player, yet can't quite seem to ever figure out how to use him. Still has not scored a goal at a World Cup. Had a great opportunity when he had a penalty in this game against Mexico, and it was saved by Ochoa, who just, for whatever reason, if I could liken it to an American reference, is like Jimmer Fredette in like March Madness, where he just like
World
catches...
Cup Ochoa is built different.
It's unreal. I'll never fully understand it, but I will embrace it. So he has his penalty saved, and that was really like one of his only impacts on the game, though. He only had one other shot in the game, and that was off target. And I just think when you have a player of his talent, you should be finding more ways to get him involved. I think it's a real problem for them, and I didn't like the way that they played. I think it's just it's a philosophical issue I think I have with the way Poland play. And again, you just have like a talent like him, and you just can't find a way to get him involved. I think every national team manager of any nation, like not even even if you're including some of the big boys, the perennial like powerhouses, would love to have a player of his caliber. They would love to have the problem of how to figure out one of the best number 9s playing right now and how to get him involved. And Poland haven't been able to do that at any point really with him. So it's super frustrating, and I just think I'm not sure they make it out of the group. I did not like their performance against Mexico. I think that was their best opportunity really to get 3 points and perhaps make it out of the group because, you get those points early and there you have it, right? Like you already have that nice springboard into your next 2 games. But I feel a lot worse about Poland, and I did not feel great about them coming into the tournament. And I feel worse about Denmark. Denmark, I think, were a very popular dark horse pick for a lot of people. They had a really impressive Euros. They made it to the semifinals, and that was obviously with the background of Christian Eriksen having cardiac arrest, and there was a lot of, I think, emotion, and I think people just became very attached to this team. I'm not here to say that it's wrong. I'm not here to say that you're wrong for having done that. I'm just saying I think some people let the emotion of all that kind of carry the day rather than the team's actual performance. They were really outperforming XG a lot in that Euros tournament. They were just kind of running on I don't want to call it luck, but things were going the right way for Denmark. And they played well too. I don't want to diminish the way that they played in that tournament because they did play well and they were able to kind of adapt on the fly. Did not love their game against Tunisia. I think the biggest concern for me was the attacking play. Really did not have a ton of clear-cut chances. They don't have like a well-defined goal scorer within this team to begin with, and I do have concerns about them going forward about scoring goals. I still think that they probably make it out of this group if I'm being reasonable, but I think this probably tempered people's expectations for this team a little bit, whereas, people were talking about maybe this team making a quarterfinals, semifinals in the World Cup. I think maybe now people are realizing maybe that's a little too much. Tunisia are a good team, though. They were frustrated by a very good opponent. They did lose Thomas Delaney to an injury for the rest of the World Cup. That's a big issue, one of their big midfield 3. So they're going to have to shuffle around there and find something new. But, I'm a little down on Denmark now. I wasn't hugely on them, to begin with, but I'm a little concerned about them going forward.
And then, you just look, obviously we have a couple more games coming up and everything, but we're gonna play a little hybrid of, we play the NL East run differential on the main pod. We're gonna play the panic-o-meter. We already mentioned Argentina. Scale of 1 to 10 on the panic meter. Where are we feeling on Argentina after losing to Saudi Arabia?
I hadn't thought about an actual number, but I know that I'm not too worried. I would say I'm like a 3. It's never good to lose your first game. That is just never a good omen. And that is just never a good way to start. Because now you do kind of push yourself up against a wall now where you need to get the results in the next 2 games. You're only guaranteed 3 games of the World Cup. That's it. And if you don't perform in just one of those, that could sink your tournament. I do have a lot of faith that they will get the results that they need to advance. And then once you're in the knockout stages, really, that's it. That's all you need to go. It becomes just survive and advance at that point.
It's like the Phillies for everybody at home.
Right, exactly. Just make it in and see what happens. And Argentina, to me, are still a team that I think can win this World Cup. I still think they have the talent. I did not see anything in that performance that said to me, wow, they're like off of it. I really felt like they were breaking the lines constantly. They were creating a lot of chances. I think they just got a little bit unlucky. We see this happen sometimes. It gets magnified when you're at a tournament like this, and every game, every goal, every minute matters so much that when you have just this bad result, it feels so much worse. But ultimately, I think they're going to be fine. I would say like 3, maybe a 4, because again, you just do have to be worried when you lose your first game. You can't just call that nothing. But the performances in this game tell me that I think this team is going to be fine. Messi looked good. Lautaro Martinez looked good. Those were like the key points for me. I still think even defensively they look good. I know that they conceded 2 goals to Saudi Arabia, but the chances that they gave up were very limited chances that, again, XG is not the be all end all, but they were low quality chances that they gave up, which is what you want. If I asked you what kind of defense do you want to have, you would say I want one that limits opponent chances. Well, that's what they did. They just sometimes the variance comes for you in the wrong way, in a real negative way, and I think that's what happened with Argentina in this game.
Yeah, and I mean you play that Saudi Arabia Argentina matchup 10 times, 9.5 times out of 10, Argentina's probably going to win it. So, I mean, you're not too nervous there. I think I'd be at a 3 as well with them. And then on the flip side, how worried are we about Germany?
Germany a little more worried about. They lose today to Japan 2-1. The reason I'm a little more worried about Germany than Argentina is their group is more challenging. And I think there were question marks about Germany coming into this tournament. They did not perform amazing at the most recent Euros, and they haven't been what I would say like sterling in a lot of like their Nations League games. There's been a lot of questions. I think a little bit of flux about this team too. They don't have like a recognized number 9. They're playing Kai Havertz there today, and he's obviously had kind of a tough time of it over the last like 18 months. He's not been at his best level. Not sure that that's his best position either, but they don't really have that like star striker or that just reliable goal scorer like they've had at previous World Cup tournaments. So that's an area of concern for me. Similar to Argentina, when you lose your first game, it's you you have to go on alert now. And they play Spain next. Spain, who just beat Costa Rica 7-0. That has turned now into a must get positive result. You have to at least draw that game if you're Germany now, which is just such a harder road that you've made for yourself. I would say I'm at like a 7 with Germany in terms of worry, because they already, they get bounced out of the groups in 2018, again, to just a little bit of unluckiness. But again, we're just not at their best, and got outplayed in a few periods. And that's all it takes. Again, when you only have 3 games, if you're not at it just for the one, that could be enough to sink you. And I didn't love the concentration I saw today from Germany defensively. I thought the lines got broken a little easy. Japan are a good team. We can't discount them at all when we talk about this result. It's not nearly the level of a Saudi Arabia upsetting Argentina. These teams are much closer than I think maybe people quite realize. But, Germany should be, I think when you go 1-0 up, you control the game as well as they did for large periods. They had a lot of chances to go 2 or 3 up, and that could have been the difference. A little similar to Argentina in that, like, you might be ruining some of those chances that you miss. Not so much for offside, just not being clinical enough. But yeah, I just think there's question marks about this team and maybe where the goals are coming from. See if Leroy Sané is healthy to play against Spain or even their final group match, because that could be a huge boost for them if you get him. Musiala looked good today. I think there's still good things about Germany. There's still things that I'm positive about that I'm looking forward to. I still think they created those chances. You just need to be clinical with them. But that's a big worry. And again, when you go a goal down like that, when you go points down like that, you have no points going into your game against Spain. That's worry, because ultimately, if you lose against Spain, then that Costa Rica game probably becomes completely meaningless. And Germany, this is a team that comes in with the expectation of making a deep run in this tournament, if not winning it. Want to be in the quarterfinals, semifinals at the very least. And the fact that they could be staring down a group stage exit is very worrying for me.
100%. And, I was thinking about this as we've been talking about everything. Obviously, going into a World Cup, you, try to determine who the group of death is. Do you think that's shifted at all from these first few rounds of games where, the group of death has kind of, shifted around and is now different than previously conceived?
So I do think Spain, Japan, Germany, Costa Rica were considered one of the, we haven't seen what is, in my opinion, the true group of death in Brazil, Cameroon, Serbia, Switzerland. And when you go by ELO rating, this is one of the toughest groups of the last 60 years. Because there's a lot of, every team in there is a quality team, and that has performed well domestically, in their domestic, confederation tournaments, right, at the Euros, at AFCON, things like that, right? We've seen these teams all do very well, and not just in those, but historically too. So I still think that's the toughest group. Yeah, Spain, Japan, Germany, Costa Rica. Maybe Costa Rica is the outlier in that group, but even them are not a bad team. I know they got absolutely taken out behind the Woodhouse today by Spain, but Spain are a very strong team. I still think that rings true to me in terms of that's kind of what I thought. That kind of lines up with where I was. As far as just general strength of groups, I would say Group F is maybe a little better than what we thought. That could maybe be a group we look back and think, wow, that was kind of a stacked team. Canada played very well against Belgium. I think they're very unlucky to not get a positive result out of that game. I think they'll really be ruining missing that penalty. But Thibaut Courtois he ruins lives. What can I say? We've all been there. So Belgium obviously escaped with 3 points in that game. Croatia and Morocco, I think, put on a good performance. It was a 0-0 draw. Those aren't always the most fun to watch, but I think both teams showed me something in that game where I think they could. I think either team could make it out of this group, and Canada can make it interesting. So I actually think this group maybe we weren't as hot on. Maybe it didn't get the narrative, the talk as maybe some other groups did. But Group F, I think, is maybe a little more challenging and a little bit more even than maybe we expected.
Yeah, and before we get to what we have up next, guys, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, they're here. They're pretty much here by the time you guys are listening to this, and no better way to get a perfect quality gift for your loved ones, the people in your lives, than with a high-quality Bino board. All of their World Cup boards are now live on their website. Bino is a game and lifestyle brand based in Phoenix, Arizona. Bino's goal is to provide the highest quality boards and a true brand experience, and every part of their boards have been tested time and time again for the best possible playability so that every Flicker's experience is a positive one. Bring the world together with Bino, and here's someone's story from the other side of the pitch. It's the best next big tabletop game for your man cave, your she shed, tailgates, or those World Cup watch parties that you'll probably be having this weekend with an extended holiday weekend if you're here in the States. Our listeners, you guys can use code BINOUSP, that's BINHOUSP, for 10% off any order at BINOboard.com, including the World Cup collection boards, the officially licensed Arsenal and Liverpool boards, as well as board accessories and apparel. That's code BINOUSP for 10% off at BINOboard.com. And with the World Cup here, there's no better way to host your watch parties than with games of Bino at the ready. Matt, we have here on the rundown, which World Cup player should you root for? And I think, that's a big thing for a lot of the casual, soccer fans out there that really only tune in for the World Cup. And even if, you are tuned in year-round like you and Dom are for the Premier League, Serie A, MLS, whatever it may be, finding your guy, I think, is a big thing in almost any sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And the World Cup is known for, throwing out these a lot of times younger players, breakout stars, and typically there's always a transfer window. Typically it's normally in the summer, and these guys usually make a big move, move to a big club team. There's always at least 2 or 3 of these players that emerge, and maybe you want to get in on that. Maybe you want to get on that ground floor and just attach yourself. Maybe you might be rooting for the U.S. Maybe you're open to finding some new players. So I'm gonna do this quiz with you because I know that you obviously you produce the pod. You hear me and Dom talk about it, but I know generally speaking still you're probably looking for that guy, maybe.
Yeah, more keen on the U.S. guys than at the national level, I would say.
Yes. Okay. So your level of fame, Kyle. Do you want a player who's a hidden gem, is kind of well known, or is famous?
I'm gonna go hidden gem.
Hipster moment. I respect it. Okay. World Cup odds. How important is contending for the title? Do you prefer underdogs? A trophy would be nice, or we're here to win.
I mean, being that, the basis of our network being formed was formed on an underdog story, I'll ride with the underdogs.
Prefer the underdogs. Also respect that. Do you want a grizzled veteran or a first-timer? Experience is overrated, or I want someone who's been there before at the World Cup?
Let's stick with the underdog story. Let's give experiences a little overrated.
A fresh face. Where should they hail from? Do you want to follow someone from Europe, Asia, or Africa, or the Americas?
Let's keep it hometown. Let's go the Americas.
Okay, should this player be good at shooting penalties? Now I know you don't care for some of these, but I think you're gonna agree with this statement. Shootouts are silly anyway. Be at least okay at it. Yes, give me a player who lives for that moment. This can be important.
Very true. Very true. And I think in the World Cup, it is that much more elevated. So give me someone who lives for that moment.
Which position is your favorite? So do you want a forward, midfielder, defender? Who are we looking for right here?
Well, let's roll with the goal scorers. I'm going to go forward.
Do you prefer the glory of the goal or the joy of helping teammates? There's nothing like a pretty pass, or you can't win if you don't score.
If you're not first, you're last. You can't win if you don't score.
There's a lot of truth to that to me. The goal scorers get the big bucks.
Yes.
It's
their faces are plastered everywhere.
It's hard as hell to score a goal, actually. What are your feelings on drawing fouls? I'd rather hit someone than be hit, or flopping is just the smart thing to do. A little bit cynical, maybe.
I'm going to say I'd rather hit someone than be hit.
Respect. You got Jamie McLaren from Australia. So you're a Socceroo now, which is...
I'll take it. Shout out to the Aussies.
Which is spiritually, he has a great facial hair setup.
He does.
So you have that going for you. I know that a lot of the Australian players are also Scottish. There's a lot of there's like 6 or 7 Scottish players. I don't know if Jamie McLaren is one. I'd say based off the name, just might be. But there we go. That is your that's Kyle Bennett's
Officially my guy.
Officially your guy. I mean, he's got nice sleeve tattoos. The Socceroos are fun. They're like a fun team to root for. In general.
Same age.
Same age.
A little bit older than me, but I'll take it. Almost same height.
There we go.
It looks like he is from Australia.
Very nice. He plays for Melbourne City. He's in the Manchester City ownership group. A little icky for me personally, but yeah, there we go. Jamie McLaren. Did not expect that one.
Not at all.
So there we go, Kyle.
News to me that Australia's part of the Americas too.
Yeah, I'm a little. I guess they kind of have to because Europe and Africa are very clearly there, but I guess
think it'd be more. I guess relative to Asia
because they have they're qualified through the Asian and Pacific Ocean qualifying, so I would think that they would just have a separate category for that. But hey, you know what? Australia is spiritually a little American, Yeah,
I think they're fun in every sport.
Yeah, they're generally a fun crowd to roll with.
Gotta see if he's on Twitter now.
Jamie McLaren, he's a great fit for you. He matched 7 of your 8 answers. The only thing
interesting.
The only thing he isn't. Oh, I guess yeah. So he's not. We selected from the Americas, but he's actually from Asia or Africa. So they did lump him in with Asia, which is where he's qualifying for. Good on penalty kicks, apparently.
And it's big.
Maybe he'll score.
We'll see.
It would be quite the moment if he did. But
now I feel obligated that I have to buy his national jersey.
The Australia ones are always nice. The Australia women's from the last World Cup, I think, are some of my favorite national team jerseys ever. So yeah, they've got some good stuff.
So we've got games on the horizon this week coming up, obviously on Friday. We got Black Friday World Cup action. We've got Thanksgiving World Cup action. Which games are you looking forward to the most that we have on deck for this second wave?
I think I'm just showing you.
Those are gorgeous.
Yes, some of my absolute favorites ever. Just the best. Obviously, the big one is USA England. I think that's the one that everyone is going to be sort of attached to. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. I picked Uruguay as one of my dark horse teams. Finally get to see them play. We still have, like I said, have 2 whole groups that we haven't seen play at all. Brazil, Serbia is going to be fantastic. And then you obviously have France, Denmark. Denmark has beaten France twice in the Nations League, and I know I said I was down on them, but they have performed well in the big moments. Sunday you get Spain and Germany. You get Argentina, Mexico on Saturday. You have a lot of really good matchups in this second wave coming up that could determine a lot within the group. Monday you get Portugal, Uruguay. Everywhere you look, you're getting really, really good fixtures and a lot of juicy matchups. And by the time we're back next week, we'll have quite a few of these groups. Will be decided. We'll already be talking about who's qualified for the the knockout stages in a few of these groups. So that'll be fascinating. We'll get a lot more clarity on a lot of the early narratives of this World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, looking at you and Dom's surprise teams to get out of their groups, you had Ecuador, Dom had South Korea, and then to not make it out, you have Brazil, contingent on some things.
Jury's still out.
And Dom had Senegal, and then your dark horse Uruguay, and then Dom has Belgium. So we'll be keeping an eye on those. Argentina not off to the greatest favorite start.
Nope. Could be doing better.
But we'll see how they bounce back. And, we've been talking, too, just in our group text that we have for the show, and then just in general, to have our high school football game early in the morning along with World Cup soccer and then NFL here. It's a big old smorgasbord of sports that we typically don't have going throughout the day, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, knowing that I'm an early riser, it was great. I wake up at work for around 5. So I woke up immediately and I had a live soccer game to watch, which was kind of nice. I won't lie. I could actually do with that more of that in my life, I think. But That's why I like Italy so much, because there's usually an early like 6:30 game. So like I'm up for that. But yeah, it's kind of. I mean, we're gonna have like I don't know what is it like 16 hours straight of like sports tomorrow, and then like a big like feast in the middle of it. So yeah, it is like. I know we talked about on the main show about the sportsgasm.
Yes.
Of when we had the Union, the Phillies, all the other Philly sports playing all at the same time. I don't know what you would call this. I think it's just, again, just like...
It's a footy-gasm.
Yeah, we'll never have this again in our lifetime because there... Well, shouldn't speak too soon, I guess. But there's very likely not to be another Winter World Cup. So, we won't really have this circumstance again. But, obviously here in America, the tradition is... American football on Thanksgiving, and then you have world football on top of that throughout the day. Trying to say who competes. Brazil, Serbia competing for some airtime with Bills Lions tomorrow. That's gonna be.
I'll take that.
It's gonna be. We're gonna have to change the channel a few times.
We'll double screen some things up, and
might have to bring the iPad to dinner and second.
We'll have the laptop set up, and
right.
That's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to. Just an experience that, we've never had. And obviously, there's some things that are pretty shitty about what's going on with the World Cup big time.
Yeah. I will say, pretty cowardly that I was really disappointed because a lot of these European teams had made this kind of agreement that they were going to wear these One Love armbands. Yeah. And the armbands themselves were really not... They were definitely, like, you could see it, like, construed as a statement about LGBTQ plus rights, and they were not, like, a typical, like, rainbow across the board. It was sort of this, like, looked like an oil spill type of thing. It was as, like, PR and, like, milquetoast of a message as I think you could possibly put out. It's very much non-offensive at all, and it's also about something that's, like, also very non-offensive, just, like, people getting to exist. So I was really disappointed that the teams backed down from that. I was really disappointed, too, in FIFA's messaging that they were going to yellow card the players for wearing those because I don't know. I don't see that working. And to me, sports and politics are intrinsically linked. They just are, especially this game that is a working man's game. I know that, a lot of times we look at these players, they've made so much money, but it is one of the few areas of life still and of employment where, like, you can have someone... It's incredibly diverse in who can make it to this level. There are obviously benefits still for people that are more well off to have those extra advantages and support systems. But you talk to a lot of these players and hear their backstories. A lot of them come from very very poor households, like low income places, and they've risen to the top and have certainly got there on merit and ability, rather than just whoever gave them their job, right? Like it's just frustrating to me, to see them back down from that message, because to me, I think, especially like here in America, we've had some very like tragic events over the past week with shootings, and I just think it's a bad time to not want to stand up for people that are just trying to exist. And it's deeply disappointing to me that they back down from that, and I think it's disappointing too from FIFA to make it an issue in that way. Just again, it really highlights just what a mistake it was giving this World Cup to Qatar. And they're flirting with Saudi Arabia for 2030. I think it's ridiculous. And it is. I'm glad that these stories have not gone away, and that we're still talking about these things. You're still having Wales had like a bunch of their. What's interesting about a lot of these supporter groups is they usually have groups within the groups.
Right.
So like Wales has an LGBTQ plus group like within it, and they wear like these rainbow bucket hats. And again, looking at the hats, you probably can't even tell that they're really rainbow because like Wales has like bright like reds, yellows, greens as a part of their color anyway. They had their bucket hats confiscated at the gates, which again is just like, what are we doing? I just, to me, it is a human right. I'm all for like when you go to other places, respecting the culture of those places, right? If that means instead of shaking hands, you hug, you bow,
right. You
kiss on the cheek, you fist bump, whatever. Like, this is the way we eat here, right? We don't use these types of utensils, or it's really impolite to do this, whereas like in your country it's no one would bat an eye at it, like those types of things. Yes, like when you're talking about like people having rights to exist and like be who they are, I like that. To me is not a respecting your culture. To me that is like you should be bringing yourself up to what is an acceptable standard for everyone. Like I'm just treating humans like humans. So has been a tough World Cup for that aspect of it all, but I'm like I said, I'm glad that story has not fallen off the path, that people are still having that discussion about it.
Yeah, and then I don't know if you saw the viral tweet. It was somebody had a like silicone sleeve that looked like a Coca-Cola can over an IPA, and then I believe the Twitter handle's at Nixtape99 quote tweet and said, "Risking going to a Middle Eastern jail for an IPA is one of the wildest things I've ever seen."
That's a bold strategy. I'll say that much. Yeah, I mean, even the drinking, like a few days before the World Cup, they decide that they're actually not going to have beer within the stadium. I'll say this, like, I'm not a big drinker. I know you aren't. Like, I do think it's a healthy discussion we could have about this.
Yeah.
Is the insistence that people have to drink to
Right.
enjoy these events. I do think there's some merit to having that discussion. However, I think people should have the option to. I think it's weird, like literally days before, to have like canceled that idea. And I'm imagining, not that I care much about Budweiser and like how they feel, but I'd have to imagine they're pissed off that they spent millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, for that sponsorship to be the official beer of the World Cup, and are now unable to kind of have their product everywhere.
Yeah, apparently it's just Budweiser Zero is
Yes.
what's available, and they don't serve it until after 6:30 p.m.
Right. So, and again, there are cultural differences, right? Like the Islamic faith is forbids drinking, and like fair enough, right? Like but I see both ways here. And it's
Right.
like maybe we should have a more healthy discussion about like how dependent we are on alcohol to enjoy things, but it's also like I still think people should be allowed to have. It's a tough one.
Also, pretty wild that every single night there's a free EDM concert.
Yeah, well,
Philly's own Diplo was there.
in their Fire Festival tents with
I saw some of the pictures from those like
the fan
shipping
villages.
containers.
Yeah,
that they're calling a fan village, and man, they are like calling them rough is an understatement.
it is a tough scene. I feel in some ways I feel bad for people because you have to spend a lot of money to go there. Like this is not cheap excursions here. I would just say in 2026, look forward to a much more
Just
normal
hopping in the car.
much more normal situation.
I did see
where we have hotels.
Yeah.
like
I did see something too that was pretty wild, and like they showed like video footage from Qatar, and like it just looked dystopian. And then somebody pointed out there's no advertisements on the vehicles, where like the buses and kind of like the like Uber type vans and stuff. Here they'd be plastered with advertisements and stuff. They're just white in Qatar, and it just kind of looks like dystopian almost.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about these cities too, and these places that are like brand new. That are just like sort of like cookie cutter, like right out of the cardboard box types of places that have been built specifically for this event. And that becomes obviously like a broader discussion about like World Cups, the Olympics, like, and a lot of times countries get them and build all these big resources, and it's very intensive on like the local population, and they have to pay for it through taxes and things, and it always goes over budget. And what happens to these places afterwards, and like there's mixed success with that. A lot of these stadiums that get built for these types of events just end up sitting there and doing nothing. And then the team villages, the fan villages, all those things typically just don't get used in the same way. So yeah, I am wondering what happens to a lot of these places now that when we're wrapping up the World Cup in a few weeks.
And like you said, 2026, I think it is beneficial that the stadiums are already built here.
Yeah, we have
all the stadiums that'll be getting used in Canada, the U.S., and Mexico are already built.
Yep, they are. And you'll get beer at them.
Yep.
Expensive beer. You'll be paying a lot. But yeah.
Oh man. Well, the World Cup's here, Matt.
The World Cup is here. It has been great.
It's been good so far in terms of just gameplay, and we'll have more next week when Dom is back with you. And make sure you guys subscribe to the Top Bins podcast feed, Apple, Spotify. Leave those 5-star reviews. It helps Matt and Dom continue to grow this show to where they want it to be. And then subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel, youtube.com/@UndergroundSportsPhiladelphia. You get full video versions of Top Bins every single week. Smash that like button, ring the bell icon, comment down below. your thoughts on the World Cup so far. And once we get to 1,000 subscribers, Matt and Dom are hopping in the World Cup time machine and going back to 2006 and breaking down Italy and Germany from the World Cup back in '06. So if you want that content, subscribe to the YouTube channel. But Matt, your final sign off here for episode 74 of Top Bins.
It has been a really entertaining World Cup so far. Really, like, even the 0-0 draws have at least been engaging in some way. I think Mexico-Poland, it wasn't my favorite, but a lot of good stuff. A lot of the favorites have been, like, blowing teams out. France, Australia, Spain, blowing it. England, we didn't even mention that much, just absolutely taking it to Iran. So, we've seen some of these big teams really put, other nations away in a very heavy-handed manner. Hoping England is not, hoping they spent a lot of that offensive load against Iran, and we're spared a little bit of that. But yeah, I've been impressed with some of these favorites and how they've handled business so far. That is not typical. We see these guys win, but the margin of victory has been something that I'm very curious about to see how that continues as we carry on with the rest of the group stage.
So there it is. Another episode of Top Bins in the books. Next week, you and Dom, episode 75. Almost that 100 mark.
Almost that 100. And we'll be talking, like I said, I think we'll have 4 groups wrapped up by then. We'll be halfway through, essentially, like figuring out the knockout stage. So we'll have plenty to talk about and preview.
It's going to be fun. So make sure you guys subscribe. Wherever you get your podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Shout out Jamie McLaren. And the boys will be back next week. Make sure you go to twitch.tv/undergroundsportsphi. Matt and I will be talking Philly sports, talking Survivor as well in just a few minutes. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for tuning in to Top Bins. And the boys will see you next week.